Hey everyone, welcome to Food Talk Live. Today I get to chat with Marcel van Ooyen, the president and CEO of GrowNYC. GrowNYC is the largest environmental profit in New York City. Marcel has significantly expanded the organization's food access efforts over the course of the time that he's worked there. GrowNYC's Greenmarkets have really paved the way for markets all over the country during COVID-19. Marcel has also been an amazing and very generous friend to Food Tank, donating space for when we've had to prepare for events. He's worked with farmers who sell at GrowNYC to donate produce for our events as well. So Marcel, I'm so happy to see you. It's been a long time. Thank you for all that you do for us and for the city of New York.
Well, thank you. Happy to be here. Love what you guys do around talking about food and raising the importance of supporting farmers and providing access to healthy food. So I'm happy to chat.
Thanks. That means a lot to us. So I've been starting the podcast on sort of a lighter note and asking everyone their favorite food memory. Do you want to share one with us?
Wow. Well, growing up with a Dutch mother who cooked from scratch every day, I would have to say it has something to do with potatoes and the 17 different ways that she would find a way to cook potatoes, whether it's boiled, fried, baked, you name it. So whenever I eat mashed potatoes, especially, it reminds me of home. So that would be my food memory.
That's really nice. That's wonderful. I love potatoes. So before we get into what you've been doing during COVID-19, can you explain to our listeners and our viewers exactly what GrowNYC is?
So we are a nonprofit in New York City. Strangely enough, we're created by the mayor back 50 years ago. So we're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, wow, which is pretty exciting, but also difficult in a COVID year.
Right.
So we are not having a big gala, sadly, because of social distancing.
Sure.
But we do a lot of stuff, especially around food and recycling and waste reduction. We run the largest farmers market program in the country, Greenmarket. We also have a bunch of related programs, including youth markets, which are teen-run farm stands. We have a fresh food box program. We now have an emergency food box program to help out with folks who are struggling in the COVID era right now. And then we do community gardening. We run the Mayor's School Garden Initiative that's been responsible for creating over 800 school gardens around New York City.
That's amazing.
And we support about 110 community gardens that we helped. Many of them we created from the ground up, as well as a learning garden out on Governor's Island where kids can tour and teachers can teach. And we had a bunch of recycling related programs, but unfortunately those were ended because of the budget crisis in the city.
Sure.
But we're hoping to soon revamp and get those going again, especially around collecting food scraps and turning them into compost. So
that's so much. There's so much that you're doing. I want to get into that emergency food box though program, because I feel like that's been so important during COVID-19, increasing food access for lots of folks, because they're either unemployed, not able to get to markets or grocery stores. Can you talk about why that developed and how you put it into place so quickly?
Yeah, sure. We, back when COVID started to hit New York City, we had seen what was going on in China and other countries, and we realized quickly that there was going to be a constriction of the supply of food and also those providing it. So we did some initial planning right off the bat based on our fresh food box program to figure out how we could create, deliverable and packaged product of local food, fresh produce to communities that were in high need. When the city, when our recycling contract ended with the city, we were able to work with the Department of Sanitation, and Kathleen Garcia she's both the sanitation commissioner and now the food czar. We worked with their staff to convert the leftover money from our contract to create a food box program, which was basically packing local produce into boxes and delivering it to community partners in the hardest hit areas in Queens, Brooklyn, the Bronx, and Staten Island. When the USDA announced the Food to Families program, we were able to work with an upstate partner to access a grant for that as well. And that allows us to really expand the size of the boxes and the number of boxes that we're doing. We're now at 25 locations, 25 community partners, delivering fresh produce from local farmers to the really hard-hit areas. Each week, about 200 boxes go to a location. They're handed out to those in need through our community partners, and it's a terrific way to support local farmers and also get really nutritious, healthy food into communities that are hard-hit.
Yeah, let's break that down. So you're providing this lifeline for sure for consumers or eaters, as we like to call them, but you're also helping farmers who lost a lot of business, especially with restaurants closing down or, being shuttered. Can you talk about like those two things, why that's so important to keep these farmers in business and also, support families who would otherwise not have access?
Yeah, certainly. These are the kind of the mid-sized farmers, the ones that we've always been focusing. Our green markets tend to support the smaller farmers. The mid-sized farmers were the ones who were growing, on not a commodity scale in New York by, no means of the word, but growing to a larger acreage scale of maybe 10 to 15 different products that were traditionally going to the wholesale market through Hunts Point and other locations to restaurants and others. So those farmers were also very hard hit, and the market dropped out. They didn't have folks buying from them to deliver that product to restaurants, et cetera. So we were able to, with the USDA money, continue to keep them farming, provide them the, what is going to be millions of dollars through that product line, and then deliver that produce for free. All part of our food hub, which we've had for about 8 years now, which is in a small 5,000 square foot warehouse in the Bronx. But we're planning on growing that to 20,000 square foot and a much larger facility when we break ground on that to allow us to help more and more farmers. That hub is also delivering produce to a bunch of other community partners, both our markets and then a number of folks who are doing emergency food programming through different ways. So it's been a lifeline, I think, for both the farmers and a true way to get that product into New York City in an efficient and effective way.
It's really exciting that food hub is going to grow, because I think, as you've pointed out, without that, you wouldn't be able to do the work that you've been doing. You wouldn't be able to increase that food access at all.
Yeah, it's been our vision for years to get that. It's taken many, many years to get that off the ground. We're hopeful that we're going to break ground this fall, hopefully, finally, with the support of the state, the city, the federal government, foundations like Bank America and others. So it's an exciting project. It'll really allow us to scale up what we're doing now to a huge extent and support a lot more farmers and get a lot more produce into neighborhoods that really need it. So, and then also supply community partners like we're doing with the Emergency Food Box Program to empower them to change their own communities. Our goal is to get the food to the communities and allow them to define their own future and how they want to use it, whether they want to create a box program, whether they want to create a market, really allow that hub to serve as a way to create economic development through food in communities across the city.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the most important part of it, letting communities determine what they want to do with it and how that can be done. You mentioned that at the start of COVID, I'm sure you were all sort of, going 24 hours a day trying to figure out how this was all going to work. And I imagine that you got a lot of questions from the farmers you work with. And I'm sure that the questions have changed over time. So can you talk about a little bit about sort of, what March and April looked like compared to now?
Well, I mean, in the beginning, the big question was, should we even be operating? I mean, we were designated as an essential operation by the governor. So that allowed us to continue, supporting the farmers. But there was, a lot of concern in the communities about whether or not gathering people together to purchase produce was safe, just like any operation that was happening at the time. So we went through a series of steps, both figuring out what the safest way was to run our markets, distancing people, distancing our stands. And we put in a lot of protocols that I think became a real model for the country. It was early on, and what we've done, I think, has been copied across many, many markets. We went further than others. We don't allow the customers to touch the produce. We required our masks before the city required masks. And really tried to set a standard for how product could be safely delivered and sold. Because we felt it was necessary, the city felt it was necessary, and the state felt it was necessary to keep the farmers farming and provide access to that food in a really dire situation where many stores were closing. Bodegas couldn't operate.
Right.
Emergency feeding, soup kitchens, food pantries were cut back because they were run by volunteers at many times, and they didn't have the staff to keep running. So it was a very challenging time, but I think what we did proved out to work really well, support our farmers, and continue to provide that access that we is our mission. So looking back, I think we fought a good fight, and
Sure.
we kept our markets going, and that's worked out. Now we're kind of to the second phase, like the city is, in reevaluating how we run our markets to kind of free up, some of the protocols that we put in so that our farmers can, not have to overstaff and reduce their overhead, still keep the market safe, but do it in a balanced way that, gets a little back to normal pre-COVID.
Yeah, I mean, the green markets and, the farmers markets that I go to in Baltimore and wherever I've lived have been such social experiences. And it's so strange sort of going now all masked up, you're right, where they hand you the produce. How do we balance, both of those things? One of the reasons that people love to go to farmers markets is that they can talk to the farmer, right? They can ask how something was grown or how, an animal was treated, all of those kinds of things. How do we balance that out right now?
Well, I think those discussions are still happening. They're just happening between a mask or two masks, one by the farmer and one by the customer. I think the challenge is how do you operate the market so that you can move customers quickly and safely in and out, and you provide that level of safety when it comes to the product that you're selling, but also allow the farmers to get to a level of sale so that they can, truly be profitable. And I think that's what we're looking at now. What is that balance as we ease the restrictions in the market? How do we do that keeps that distancing that's required, but also, allows the farmers to, get back to a little bit of normal in their sales levels? Because as we get into August and September, around September and October, those are, for farmers, those are the 2 months that determine whether or not they can keep farming. So it's really important that we, keep the markets operating safely, but also, try to increase the amount of sales that happen to our farmers. So it's always a balance. We're always trying to figure out that sweet spot, and we continue to work through those issues.
Right. What if you could rank the challenges that you've faced, sort of since March? Has it been safety that has been your sort of biggest concern, or what other challenges really stumped you at certain points?
Well, there were a myriad of challenges. In the beginning, there were press challenges, about whether or not we should be out there on the streets, and I had an inbox full of emails of people saying that I was crazy for doing what we were doing, and then there were true logistical challenges. We've had to triple our staff at the markets in many of the larger markets so that we barricade them off and do customer count to allow people in. That increases cost dramatically for a nonprofit. That's a challenge. We provided hazard pay to our staff to respect the work they're doing for our field staff. So to increase their salary in the COVID time, another additional stress on us as a market operator, but not raising the fees on our farmers. And then there's just the constant challenges of making sure that the markets are safe, chalking the sidewalks, spreading people out, having communication with the farmers on why what you're doing. It is I can't say that there's been any one challenge that was greater than the other, but there's probably in anything like this, there's probably 50 or so challenges happening all at once that we were balancing to really continue to operate.
Absolutely. What has been the reaction from customers at the market? What are you hearing from them?
Well, most of it is thank God you're still here. In the beginning,
Right.
That was a that was a big, a lot of people, and thank you for how you're running the markets to make them safe. I think intuitively people thought in the beginning, although the science is now catching up with this, that being outside and being in an open air environment and social distancing in a safe way was a safer way to shop. So we had a lot of people who were, both skeptical about it, but then most were like, thank you for being open, thank you for the farmers continuing the farm.
Right.
Providing a little normalcy in a very abnormal time where people could go to the market, they could buy produce, they could see their farmers that they've seen for years and get that really great product. So that's been a lot of I think the praise and thank you we've gotten, which we appreciate. And it was hard fought to do. So
I'm sure
my Greenmarket staff deserves an incredible amount of credit for all the work that they did, especially the field staff who are out there every day, even on a day like this when it's 100 degrees outside.
Right.
Out there running the markets. The farmers deserve an immense amount of credit for continuing to stick to the markets and farming, and the customers. We're thankful for them for continuing to come to the market and supporting the farmers, and keeping this whole thing going through a very difficult time.
Absolutely. Do you think that your former role, you were the legislative director for the New York City Council, do you think that has helped you sort of maintain sort of an approach to this that, like what you mentioned before, sort of dealing with the press, dealing with, consumers, dealing with farmers? Has that helped you sort of manage all of that experience?
Yeah. I worked in City Hall for many years, and I was in charge of passing laws. So I used to say that if I made everyone a little unhappy, I did my job. It was, this is kind of that situation in many ways where the farmer's a little unhappy, the customers are a little unhappy. But I think what's most important about my past is I was able to understand how government works. And we have a super supportive governor of the farming community and what we do. We have an amazingly supportive city of providing food access. We're kind of the nexus of those two things.
Yeah.
The city has been insanely helpful on so many levels, from the Parks Department allowing us extra space to the Food Czar's office funding our programs and working through us through the police department, supporting us to continue to run these markets in very difficult times when no one knew whether or not we should be doing this. So I can't say enough about how amazing everyone's been, both on the city and state level, to keep what we're doing going. But I think having years of experience working through bureaucracies has probably been one of the things that the skill set that helped from that. So.
Well, you're so right about the New York City government and the New York State government really taking this on, and like you with GrowNYC sort of leading the way for the rest of the country, setting this example. Our federal government hasn't been so good at doing that, and so I'm wondering, as somebody who works with farmers, who's concerned about eaters, who's concerned about access and affordability as well as inequality in New York City and elsewhere. What would you recommend that the federal government do, that the administration do? What do we need from our legislators right now?
Well, clearly SNAP is a huge issue, and there are some, I guess, bright lights when it comes to what's going on with SNAP, including the SNAP they're giving out to school kids at this time, which is an interesting program. To praise them, I think the Food to Families program for us, Farmers to Families program, has worked really, really well, and we hope it continues. They renew it on every 2 months or so. I think it's super important to keep that program going and to continue to contract with the organizations that are really delivering.
Yeah.
But on a macro level, cutting SNAP and threatening these programs that are lifelines to people eating is really dangerous. I think we need some sort of immigration policy that makes sense, especially for farmers. And it's very difficult to farm without labor, and they need to work those issues through. I don't know that it's going to happen until we have a change, in the White House right now. So that's unfortunate. We need some rational decision making when it comes to that. And I think that there are a lot of innovative programs that have come out of New York City, including the Health Buck program. There's a match for SNAP.
Sure.
So every $5 you spend, you get a $2 coupon. Taking those programs that are really innovative and are, they're not red state programs, they're not blue state programs. They're programs that help farmers and help people who are in need and need extra food. And expanding those and paying attention to that to the point where we're not subsidizing the creation of corn and soybeans that gets turned into high fructose corn syrup that makes our kids sick. We're actually funding and supporting small farmers who are growing, in responsible ways and delivering our produce to people who need it most. That's the kind of future that I think we really need.
Yeah.
Innovative programs to, really think about how we're growing, who we're growing for, and where it's going. It still can support farmers, but it does it in a way that, doesn't sicken our country and result in a lot of related healthcare costs. So
absolutely. And I think the idea of the future we're planning for. We've talked over and over on this live cast / podcast about what people hope will happen post COVID, whenever that is. Hopefully very soon. But what are the ways that you hope that the food system, in addition to what you already mentioned, but the food system sort of in New York, but also worldwide? What are some of your hopes and dreams for how to transform and really revolutionize the food system so that it fulfills all of the things that a good food system, what we want from it? Healthy people, a clean, a non-polluted environment. Economic support. How do we do that? What are your thoughts?
Well, that is a big question.
It's a big question, but I think we're all thinking about it. I mean, I have ideas. I know nobody who's working in this world right now doesn't have ideas.
Well, I think one of the most promising things that's happened with COVID is people really started to think about the food supply in a critical way.
Yeah.
And when you have to cook at home and you're not, there's been a trend nationally where I think the first time a couple of years ago, more food was bought from restaurants and other prepared areas than was bought at grocery stores. And that's a growing trend in the United States of America, that you're seeing more people eat out or buying a prepared meal at a grocery store or fast casual, or getting from their schools and other things their meals. So, I think having to cook at home makes you a lot more thoughtful about what you buy and what you eat. And there's been a lot more attention to people, joining our food box programs or shopping at the markets.
Right.
And that's positive. And I hope that kind of critical thinking about where your food comes from and who's growing it and who's touching it and how many times, kind of sticks with people and that continues post-COVID. But I also think that, we had a real breakdown. The challenge with food, and I've said this on a macro level, is especially in New York City, is unlike water, where we spent billions of dollars to build aquifers and tunnels and set aside land to protect our water, or air, where we're regulating vehicles and homes and whoever's producing. The food system has been left to private industry.
Right.
So what happens there, and that's the American way in many ways, but when you have a pandemic like this and companies can't operate or choose not to operate because it's not profitable for them, there is a restriction on the food supply. And the people who suffer the most are people who can afford to pay the least. So that is a real challenge. And I think investing in programs like our Food Hub and others that are really have a mission behind it and are going to continue to operate and continue to provide access to food in good times and bad is super important for policymakers to really think about, because we didn't stop. We actually expanded. Our hub has never been busier. We're doing more.
Right.
We've increased our sales by $1 million this year, just because of all the institutional suppliers that we need to provide food to. And that's all coming from local farmers. And that's a great thing. I hope that continues. And I hope that everyone, when they step back after COVID and realize that you need to invest in infrastructure, it's important. and it's the future of getting food from one location to the other without refrigerated trucks and a refrigerated warehouse and a mission-driven organization to support the purchase and delivery. All that does not exist. It's all just talk.
Yeah. What kind of infrastructure do we need the most, Marcel?
Well, I mean, you need like what we're building. We're building a 50,000 square foot warehouse where we're going to rent out part of it and live in 20,000 square feet. It's going to have freezers, refrigerators. You need trucks that are, refrigerated. You need staff who are trained and know how to run this, and drivers. And there's enough farmers willing to farm and enough people willing to buy. It's just the breakdown of that connection that, and not just the connection that is willing to do it, but you need that people who are willing to do it with a mission behind it.
Absolutely.
That when the going gets rough, they keep going and they don't stop and wait for the going to get better again.
You mentioned that, your Greenmarkets, there's no touching by the consumer. It's, the farmer handing the customer what they want. How does that work with packaging? I know, GrowNYC is an organization that's always been trying to be very green and sustainable. Are you concerned about sort of the increase in packaging? I mean, I just see it at my own farmer's market. There's a lot more plastic. There's a lot more container use, that kind of thing.
I don't know if that's increased per se. I think, you have, if you bring your bag, they will take it from you and place the product into that bag.
That's great.
There are a number of farmers who have always pre-bagged some apples. We don't have a ton of prepared food in our markets just because of our rules. There is some packaging that's always around baked goods, but I don't think that our packaging increased dramatically because of that change in how it's handled. It may even be less because now people aren't grabbing a bunch of T-shirt bags and
sure.
putting one thing in one thing and one thing in another.
Sure.
So, I'm hopeful that has reduced. I think once we get food scrap collections back in the market, that'll be an exciting turn to start to reduce our waste. City has rules around plastic bags, that I think they told for now, but are going to go back in effect soon. So, I don't think that's been a huge challenge for us.
Good to hear. How do you imagine your other programs evolving, like the Learning Garden, with, schools out, we're not sure what things are going to look like in the fall. How do you create sort of that still learning environment for teachers and students without having them maybe meet?
We've been doing a lot of that online, and it's been very popular, both teaching people how to garden at home. I think we've been astounded at how many people have tuned in for our learning tools online, both teachers
That's
and others. People are growing a lot at home and have questions. We've had Q&As that have had thousands of people email in asking questions. We've loaded up videos that have gotten more hits than I ever expected on how to grow different things, and the garden out on Governor's Island has been doing like its own, cast of videos on how to grow and donating all the produce that they're growing to the, local food soup kitchens and pantries that are utilizing it. So in fact, they've done some really innovative stuff. They have a flower garden out there, and volunteers have come out there and cut those flowers and delivered them to people in hospitals and other locations, just as a way to show, love and support in a really difficult time. So, my staff is crazily innovative in how they do that. I think we actually have a TikTok channel, believe it or not, which
that's great.
I'm not involved in, but I encourage my son, my 13-year-old son, to tune into, because he seems to be into TikTok. So, they're out there pushing the education in really smart and helpful ways, and we'll continue.
And it's so creative. I mean, I think that's what, gets people involved. They see the fun in it, and people need a lot more joy than they did maybe 6 months ago. So I think that's great. Congratulations on your 50th year. You mentioned not being able to, probably have the big gala and other stuff that you had planned. What do you plan to celebrate this year despite sort of the challenges?
Yeah, well, we have a couple little things. I don't want to talk about them yet. That we're planning. One of them's kind of a musical
Top
thing.
secret. Oh,
Yeah, a
great.
little musical thing that should be fun that we're doing. And we're gonna probably we've been holding off because of everything that's been going on in the city and across the world.
Sure.
In fact, rightfully so. But hopefully, maybe in the fall we'll be doing something a little more around our 50th and celebrating that and in safe and virtual ways maybe. So, but for now, we're just out there working hard. Staff is insanely innovative and hardworking and keeping our markets going, keeping our gardens going.
That's great.
Teaching the kids who are at home and soon to be in school, and preparing for the fall when we get really, really busy, if that's even more possible now.
That's great. So if folks want more information, they can go to GrowNYC.org. Any other handles or websites you want to give out?
Well, we have a Instagram, Facebook. We have a robust social media content on all of those. So
Yep.
friend us on Facebook and Instagram and whatever the kids do today. So
Great.
you'll learn a lot. There's a lot of great information on there. And get involved, volunteer. If you want to support what we do, go on there and make a donation. We certainly could use it this time. We have our emergency food box program. We have a GoFundMe page for that people can.
Awesome.
Critical program to support getting those 25-pound boxes of local produce into low-income communities. So, just keep shopping, and we'll be there for you.
That's great. So again, GrowNYC.org. We'll have that available on our website, foodtank.com, and our social media. Marcel, such a pleasure to have you. I hope folks will join me on our next episode when I'll be talking to Jim Goodman of the National Family Farm Coalition. Marcel, please stay safe and well, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you.